Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I'm also the parent of two ADHD kids, one of each, a hyperactive one, and one who's inattentive type. And for you, okay, my audio engineer has just signaled that I'm actually making noise. Okay, want to talk today. Today I'm a little bit, oh, contemplative, I guess. I have been going through my mother's old possessions. Um, when you're the oldest child, you get to do all that rummaging through stuff when people die. It's not a lot of fun, but sometimes it brings a lot of memories and things. So I've been going through, picture books and files of collected newspaper clips and all kinds of stuff like that. And it really emphasized to me, and this is coupled with my brother telling me on a phone call that somebody where he works had asked him if he has ADHD, and he's never been diagnosed. And when I think about it, he definitely should have been diagnosed. As I say nearly weekly, ADHD is a genetic disorder, genetic neurologic disorder. It runs in families. There's a thing called heritability index, which just shows how likely it is to be transmitted to the next generation, whatever we're talking about. It could be dementia, it could be, well, almost anything, any physical disorder. And ADHD has a very high heritability index. I've seen estimates somewhere around 75%, which is extraordinarily high. 50% is high. So at 75 is, oh my God. So that means if your family, you obviously are watching this because you have ADHD in your family. These people frequently do not know they've got ADHD, especially if you're from my generation. But even now, I still see it and hear it, that ADHD, that's a bunch of baloney. That's not a real thing. That's just something made up, yeah, it's been diagnosed since about the 1700s, maybe the 1600s. That was in Scotland, of course, but it was still diagnosed. Come to think of it, I have a lot of Scottish ancestry. So I'm like 75% Scottish, which with a French name, you would think, but no, mostly Scottish. But the thing you need to recognize is that a lot of the people I can think of, my relatives, my uncles, and that sort of thing, it's like, when are they ever going to grow up? For crying out loud, he goes out and he buys himself a motorcycle for crying out loud, and he can hardly pay rent, and on and on and about that sort of thing. And the other part of that is, in addition to having a reputation in your family for being some kind of wastrel, I guess would be the Shakespearean term, but it's just that ADHDers, on average, are about 3 years behind in terms of maturity from their peers. I mean, it's a bigger deal when you're talking kids. Adults, but there are still some things you see in adults with ADHD, especially untreated, that are, if you think about it. Well, now, one of the handicaps I have with my family is I've known these people for a long time, and I just don't think about them clinically, and then every once in a while somebody will say, isn't he? And I go, damn, I didn't even think about that. But your ADHD relatives, especially the ones who aren't diagnosed, they probably have some problems from the fact that they're not diagnosed. You think about all the symptoms you can have of ADHD and how it interferes with what we think of as normal adult behaviors and so on. They they think it's something wrong with them. I suppose technically, yeah, you got ADHD, but if you don't know you've got an ADHD, you got ADHD. You don't know there's an explanation for why you can't seem to make a relationship work, or uh, why you keep having to change jobs, and what's a good job for you, and how do you figure it out, and all those, and you think there's something wrong with you, and the other people in the family are talking about you, and Freddie can never keep it together, and you have a lot of that, and it's unfortunate for everybody. Uh, I remember I think, well, my age doesn't really matter. I was an adult anyway, and I think I was already a psychologist. Anyway, and some guy got in touch with my parents and wanted to know all about family history. His last name was also Gingrass, and he'd retired from like some public service sort of job working with the state, and his hobby now was uh, genealogy. Doing all the trees that show all your relatives, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, your great grandparents, and so on. And so he was running one of those, and he happened to mention that our particular branch of the family had not been blessed by fortune as much as some of the others. Okay. I look at my family and I can see, okay, my brother, yep. My dad, probably. Um, I mean, he was a golf pro, which, that means I was the only kid in the neighborhood whose father had orange pants. So but it's one of those things where you can kind of not really have to grow up, you just have to play golf pretty well. And he was really good at that. Uh, but some of the other things about, adult behavior and that sort of thing just wasn't in the game. And neither my brother or I exactly understood what was going on. But okay, now you may be one of the parents or grandparents even with ADHD yourself, and it may have been diagnosed, and you may uh, be on medication, or you're taking care of it, and you've learned how to take care of it, hopefully. And the deal, though, that with your kids and your relatives is, especially the relatives who don't know they've got it. I mean, that really can be a huge deal. I've worked with a lot of those kind of people, and some of them you can, I don't want to say fix, but some of them you can teach them how to adapt and adjust, and uh, it doesn't affect them as much. And others just, they're so angry at the world that they probably won't uh, be able to adjust well. Anger is probably the hardest thing. Chronic anger, that just they think it's part of their inheritance or something, that they just are always angry, and they're really hard to work with. And the other issue, well, there are a bunch of other issues, but if you don't know you've got it, you don't treat it, you think it's your fault. Some people have been told they have it, and they don't. They come out, get all macho and that sort of thing, and I'm, I'm just, or I've had fathers. He's just a normal boy, he's just a high energy boy, Yeah, he's a high energy boy and he's got attention deficit disorder, which is why he has trouble reading and has trouble with other things that require concentration. So, your family's got it. So the question is, how many of your people have it? And, like I know in my own household, I had three kids, and I've got two that are ADHD. One was a hyperactive type, and those are the ones that are easy to diagnose. And the other was an inattentive female type, which are harder to diagnose and frequently are not diagnosed. And then I have one that's responsible, reliable, a little bit compulsive, da 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 da. He works in IT, and uh, I have no real thoughts that he has ADHD. So 1 out of 3. Okay, and that's a little low, but I mean, the percentage of ADHD is a little low, but that's I'll take it. But the other two, have had to learn to work out things, and some of they do some things well, and do some things really not well. Now, for just a real quick rundown, ADHD has these symptoms that are pretty noticeable. Okay, one is time sense. They have no sense of time, no sense of how long it takes to get things done, and they lose track of where they are and what time it is and that sort of stuff. So they're always missing appointments, missing deadlines, all that sort of thing. Then there's just executive functioning in general. They have problems with organization and planning, and they have an issue with using any techniques to organize or plan. They don't tend to use those consistently. That's not one of the symptoms, but it's one of the things that happens frequently. Then we got they can hyperfocus, and then hyperfocus is one of the things that can be a real saver. If you happen to have the ability to hyperfocus on something that you can get paid to do, you are miles ahead of the game, because you will tend to be more productive than most people, because you'll just keep going at it, and and you'll forget what time it is, and you'll just get things done. And that's hyperfocus. There's also a thing called hypercuriosity that has just been identified, and I know that is one of the things, because when I'm with my ADHD relatives, it's like, wow, it's like I've got Google all over the place. These people know weird stuff for who knows what reason. My daughter is an expert on music from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And, her friends are, how do you know all that? Well, they're very curious. They tend to enjoy playing around with information. That's a good thing. That can be a saver. Okay, then back to the downside kind of things. ADHDers frequently make job changes. They're frequently restless. They have relationship problems. That is, they are I mean, it's harder to tell nowadays when every other married couple is getting divorced, but it used to be really much more observable that they would have frequent relationship changes. And then there's emotional sensitivity, which we, now are calling rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is a mouthful of Latin terms but basically they take offense at lots of things. They are way more sensitive emotionally to things, and criticism, real or perceived. I mean, and that may possibly just be for the simple fact that they get criticized a bunch more than regular people. I'm sorry, neurotypical people. And a lot of ADHDers have some problems with an impulsive behavior of some sort. Sometimes it's spending too much money, more than they've got, always being short at the end of the month kind of thing. And sometimes it's goes into addictions of different kinds. Uh, Alcohol is the most common one right now. Don't know with the younger generations coming up what if that'll change, but um, and alcohol's a funny kind of thing because if you're just drinking it a little bit, it actually makes you feel better as an ADHDer because it increases dopamine. But you start abusing it, and then you start killing the kinds of the central nervous system's ability to produce dopamine, and then you're feeling worse than neurotypicals. So anyway, so those are the kind of disorders, and now you think about your relatives that don't quite fit in, your aunts, your uncles, and even grandparents and great grandparents if they're still kicking. It's these are people, and if they have not been diagnosed, they think it's their fault, and that's never a comfortable feeling, never a comfortable way to live. So and it is tricky to be late diagnosed. It really is, and it's tricky to treat because you're so used to taking the blame or thinking that the world sucks and it's not fair, and you're always, why am I always getting the one getting fired or getting into trouble? Well, frankly, it's probably the ADHD, and it's probably stuff you're doing without much control or awareness of. But one of the things we need to do, or we need to think about doing, is what's the best way to handle that? I mean, do you suggest that they get checked out, or do you talk about how well things are going since you were diagnosed, or how much of an improvement it is for your child when he or she's been diagnosed and treated? That's the safer way, is the more the modeling kind of thing, and show them that it works kind of thing. And they might be willing to, I've wondered about myself, and well, yeah, you ought to get it looked at. It doesn't hurt for sure. And it might help you out a lot. Life could get easier. I mean, you have to be willing to be a little bit discreet about what you say and how you say it. You don't want to just come up to them and say, yeah, go get yourself evaluated. You've got ADHD and you're a pain in the butt. No, not a good thing. Not a good thing. You want to be telling them that life can be better, that it's not their fault and life can be better. And if they just start taking care of things and start recognizing their problems and having more focused sort of solutions than they've been using so far, and eventually they'll probably thank you. Okay, can't guarantee that. That was I was talking to when I told you I was talking to my brother, and he had he just didn't know what ADHD was, and he just thought it was something bad. He thought, I'm not stupid. No, that's not what it's about. Um, but so, he's the doctor's brother, and here I am. He doesn't know anything about ADHD. So I did a newsletter the other day on similar topic, and I don't usually do that because I like to keep the newsletter separate from the podcast. But I will be sending him a copy of the one I wrote, and hopefully it'll help him out. I mean, he's getting to be an old man, so I don't know about changes for him, but it I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing what's going on with yourself, and knowing what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and being honest about it. That's supposed to be one of the things that we call wisdom when people get to be a certain age, is that they understand what their strengths are and they understand what their weaknesses are, and they adapt and adjust to it. And of course, that's the hardest part of anything, is adapting and adjusting. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. This has been Dr. G's ADHD Chat. We're trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I also do a lot of coaching, usually with ADHDers, but I also do executives of from different areas. I am available. You can get me. You go to my website. It's terrygingrassphd.com. I have Calendly on there. Here's one of those buttons you push, and you can get Calendly, and you can make an appointment, and we can have a freebie talk for about 30 minutes or so about what your kind of problems you're having and what you're looking for in terms of a coaching kind of relationship. So we'll see if we can like each other or like working together. Okay, so I will catch you next week, same time. And be good to yourself, huh? No, don't count on anybody else to be. Okay, we'll catch you later.